A common property of muscles is the ability to contract due to muscle proteins. The three types of muscle tissues in the human body are the smooth, the skeletal, and the cardiac muscle tissues. Smooth muscle tissue can be found in our internal organs. Skeletal muscle tissue makes up our skeletal muscles, and cardiac muscle tissue is only found in the heart. Smooth muscle tissue is resistant to fatigue but is relatively weak. Its cells are elongated and spindle-like. This type of tissue can be found in our internal organs. It is responsible for the peristaltic movement of the gastrointestinal tract, the contractions of the uterus during childbirth, the secretion of glands, and the regulation of blood pressure through the contraction and dilation of blood vessels. Smooth muscle tissue cannot be controlled voluntarily. Cardiac muscle cells form long, branching fibers with a striated pattern. The lines between cells are called Aberth's lines. Cardiac muscle is only found in the heart. It is very strong and highly resistant to fatigue. The average resting heart rate is about 72 beats per minute, which means our heart beats more than 100,000 times a day, and over 2 billion times in a 70-year lifetime. Skeletal muscle tissue is composed of multinuclear muscle fibers, in which the cells are not separate. The nuclei are pushed against the membrane of the muscle fiber. The fibers do not branch out. They have a characteristic striated pattern, which is caused by the regular arrangement of muscle proteins. This type of tissue makes up our skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles are connected to the bones through the tendons. They form the active part of the musculoskeletal system. Skeletal muscle is strong, but less resistant to fatigue, so it needs time to recover after intensive work. It is controlled voluntarily. Human locomotion and movement result from the contraction and relaxation of skeletal muscles. Muscles are attached to the bones by tendons, tough bands of fibrous connective tissue. Muscles are covered with epimysium, a layer of connective tissue. Muscles are composed of fascicles, which are covered with perimysium, another layer of connective tissue. Fascicles are composed of muscle fibers. Muscle fibers are formed by the fusion of muscle cells, and they can therefore be considered single multinuclear cells. They contain actin and myosin, proteins that produce contractions in the muscle. Actin and myosin are bundled in myofibrils, which have a characteristic striated structure due to the organization of the actin and myosin filaments. This is why skeletal muscles are also called striated muscles. The band that contains myosin is called the A band. The H zone, located within the A band, only contains myosin, while the I band only contains actin. When the muscle is stimulated, the actin and myosin filaments slide over one another. The I band and the H zone become shorter, and the muscle contracts. The molecular mechanism of muscle contraction is as follows. Stimulation of the muscle results in an increase in the calcium level of muscle fibers. Calcium ions bind to the troponin, which causes tropomyosin to move, and thus the myosin-binding parts of the actin become uncovered. Myosin binds to the actin. ADP and phosphate are released, and the myosin head bends and pushes the actin. Then ATP binds to the myosin head, which releases the actin. The ATP molecule splits into ADP and phosphate, and the myosin binds to the actin again. This process continues while the calcium level in the muscle fiber is high. When the stimulation is over, the calcium level decreases, and the troponin-tropomyosin complex returns to the default state.